not dying?
Hey sis, welcome to the Mama Trauma Barbie podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Wagner, and while I'm tough as a mother, sometimes I know we're all out here, tired of needing to be one. Buckle up as we land the mothership and all things motherhood in the real world. Before we move on, I'd like to thank the incredible sponsors who saw an opportunity to support women in their day-to-day journeys by joining together to make this podcast a reality. Thank you, Precision Chiropractic, Jennifer Panzician with Edward Jones, Dutch Maids, the Avalon Foundation, and Chica Creative for believing in better care, better support, and better outcomes for mamas and their families in the real world. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical, health, or nutritional advice. Welcome back for part 2 with my special guest and friend, Deborah Ayres, as we talk about making space for grief. And woof, it was a heartfelt combo as we dive deep on this one. My biggest takeaway, be that friend to women. I love that we're able to give some tangible suggestions on this podcast. Again, we've held some things so high level, but I feel it's so important because a lot of this does fall on mamas, right? Yeah. And so you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, you're completely revamping your life, you're grieving expectations, you're taking certain things out, you're bringing new things in, and this can be really, really overwhelming. And so I just want to give all, again, the grace and the mercy for the mamas listening, but you have to know that not only are your kids going through a lot, you're going through a lot. And so take that walk, ask for help. You know, we haven't really brought up spouses and we hit on it a little bit, but you know, John and I would say we're running as well-oiled machines, right? By the time we had our second child. Sure, there were some soft signs in there, but we were still operating as what I would call version 1, right? Of how we were 1.0 and how we were operating with 2 children. And what I find through, you know, coaching and maybe as you as well dealing with clients is we're trying to take our old life and make it fit in work in this new version of what's unfolding. And that's not the answer. The answer is to step into the possibilities and permission of what is in front of us. And oftentimes that means we have to let things go. And you brought that up earlier. And so I think it's really important to revisit that here. But as you're bringing this up again, you know, with spouses, it's so important to ask for what you need. And I needed a lot of different things from John in version 2.0. And that was really hard for me because I'm this independent woman. You know, we operated very well and we still asked for what we needed. But I mean, I went from like what was a level 4 needs in my relationship with my husband. And we literally, like a Corvette, went from 0 to 60. And my needs, I don't even think were, if they were 1 to 10, I was somewhere in like flashing lights 11. Yeah. And it took me a minute to find my footing. And so, you know, as we talk about spouses or significant others, you know, what advice do you have there, or what suggestions as you also navigated this as someone who was married and then went through divorce?
Yes, I did. And that's not uncommon at all. So yes, shortly after, well, actually, just before my daughter was diagnosed, I went through the loss of each of my parents separately. And then our daughter's diagnosis, so kind of the loss of her expected health, and then the loss of my marriage. Not uncommon at all, just processing in different ways and not able to meet our own needs, let alone each other's. And so that did happen. You know, I like to explain relationships. Healthy relationships are like a 3-legged table. You need a balanced amount of love, respect, and trust. Those are the 3 legs of the table. And oftentimes when we go through this journey, different legs get worn down and the table is no longer even. You can't use, you don't have the right balance of things, talking about balance again. I knew in reflection, I really knew when I got to the point that most of my trust and most of my respect had been worn down. I had still a lot of love for my first husband, but I did not have as much respect or trust with him anymore. And my daughter was young, and I did not want to wait, having been a counselor and seeing a lot of couples go through the period where they lose the love before they get divorced. I didn't want to do that. I felt like that was going to be a major disservice to our daughter and not very respectable about our relationship that we had had. I saw our relationship coming to an end in the way that we knew it. And I wanted to respectfully honor that and step out of it while she was young enough to still adapt and love was still available. And so I asked for a divorce. That led us to a place where, with her special needs, her dad and her mom were able to work together and co-parent in a very healthy way through her childhood. And then I met somebody else, and we were all able to show up for her. So we kind of laughed. We'd go to parent teacher conferences and say, "Hey, you get 3 parent volunteers instead of 2 in this family." But because I waited long enough, but not too long, I really felt like it was best to leave while she was young, leave the relationship, and that there was still love available. And that was the way we were able to keep loving her together and never really disrespect each other. So that helped. It's a little bit of a backdoor into it all, but that helped us get through it all because we were better parents separately than we were together. And that was better for her. And so we still went through this journey together, but we did it more as friends and as a different kind of family instead of as a couple.
Thank you for sharing that. I know there's so many families that are in the middle of this that maybe are finding themselves in this and on the fence of where they are with their spouse and significant other. And so just
Yeah.
outlining that in a really beautiful way for people to have space to find themselves in it. But I love the 3-legged stool, right? Trust, respect, and love. And so for maybe some of you on the fence that heard Deb's story, that was an invitation to maybe, where are you with those 3 things? I think what's really difficult, I look back at my journey and where we were years ago when we were in this and we were working with a couples counselor. And, I just kept getting the pushback around my part. And it's so wild, right? Because I'm going through all of these different things and I felt like I had nothing else that I could give with needing to work through my own trauma and grief and expectations and where I was myself. And then where I was with needing to help my daughter. And then here's my marriage. And there was so much more that was needing to be given. And so I really recognize for a lot of people that are in this, it's almost like that invisible diagnosis or disease, right? Certain people you can see in a wheelchair. And then as it relates to mental health and trauma, I was on the floor. And there was just a point when we were going through this that I absolutely had nothing else to give. But from the outside, from everyone around me, whether it was running the restaurant or my husband, and because I was keeping the wheels on the bus, what no one was seeing, right? And I even got to the point where I was articulating it, where it's I cannot do anything else. And it was my decision behind needing to sell the restaurant because I just recognized the only priority right now is myself, my daughter, and my marriage. And if I was going to try to do anything outside of that, I'm pretty sure my health was already on the line, but I didn't want to know. And I don't know what would have happened if I would have stuck around doing it the way that I think that our society tells us that we need to. But it was really difficult even saying out loud to the people around me that I was struggling. It was really hard for them to see that I was, and for us to start changing the ship and turning it from that place so that we weren't hitting an iceberg.
Well, sure. You look great. You're still moving. You're
Yep.
talking. You put makeup on. You get out of the house. You're running a restaurant and nobody actually understands the storm happening inside. But I think that, at the risk of alienating people that might be bigger fans of dads, I'm a huge fan of dads. I'm a huge fan of all partners, however they show up, whether they're stepdads, dads, moms, stepmoms, whatever type of couple arrangement you're in. But I'll tell you this. So, as you mentioned at the beginning, Avalon and I went on to start a foundation to help other families like ours. We have now in 6 years served over, I think, 125 families have requested support for their journey in the rare disease community. Out of that, around 125, I think we had a couple more this week. We might be above that. Only one was a dad that reached out.
Mm-hmm.
Only one. So it's not that dads aren't participating and part of the household and helping and, partaking in the programs that we create to help families, regulate themselves through this. It's that the moms are the ones reaching out. The moms are the ones in charge of. The moms have, I'm in everything I've learned, I'm struggling to say this, but it's the truth. Dads can be very, very present, and they're still not the mom. I'm sure that there are some situations out there that could contest that. I'm not saying that, but the majority, the usual right now, moms are paying attention to the psycho-emotional health of the whole household. They feel responsible for that. And they really are. They're the nucleus of whether or not everybody's calm or everybody's in disarray, right? So it's a lot for moms. And so when you talk about being on the floor, hell yeah, most moms are. And we're still finding that grit. How do I do this? For you, it was like, how do I do this? I have to give up my business, or I can't do this anymore because I'm dying here. I'm on the floor, And so that's like the grittiness of figuring that out and saying, I'm going to give this up and pivot.
Well, you brought up the warrior, in a conversation that we had a while ago and earlier in this podcast episode. And, I think that's the mindset shift for a lot of women. Is it is so easy to find yourself in despair in this. And so what was really interesting for me, finding myself on the floor, I had to strip myself of so much down there that it was actually quite empowering, because what I also noticed was, I was asking for things that I needed in new ways. And while I wasn't always being heard or understood, and you also brought this up earlier, because not everybody around you is going to, what was still so powerful for me in that moment was it was shedding things that were not working for me anymore, but it was asking for what I needed. And regardless of whether anybody else was seeing it or hearing it, I knew I needed it. And I knew I wanted it.
Yeah.
And I knew innately and in my bones that there was this power and piece of me that was worth going after all of this. And I kept working towards it. And I think that's the part for moms is like, you're not going to have everybody meet you where you're at all the time. You're not going to always fully have the support that you need. But if you can go so far deep inside of you and recognize what it is that you need and that you're worth going after it, damn, like that has just been like, the power of maybe getting into my 40s or like, finding myself 5 years into this journey, that regulation piece of standing so firmly in who you are and what your family needs and operating from that place, like, like powerful. It's just, it's
blows
so
it all
powerful.
away. Yeah. Mary Beth Crawford talks about the ability that we develop to fine tune between recognizing a challenge as being life-threatening versus life-changing. And so I think we become empowered as we go further on this journey as moms and caregivers to recognize, okay, that's not life-threatening. That's life-changing. And I can empower myself to decide what the change is going to be. And, what do I want that to look like? And how do I feel about it so that I can own it instead of it owning me? And I think that's where you can, if you're in the beginning of the journey, look forward to growing to that place, because you will. It's inevitable. It is inevitable unless you stay stuck in a, really low mindset. The thing of it is when you have a growth mindset, it's what brings the greatest gifts. And you can recognize that you can meet the greatest challenges with that growth mindset. And so then you get to empower yourself. And it's like pulling up your granny pants. It's like, hey, I'd much rather have on, my sexy lingerie, but my granny pants are on. I'm here. I'm showing up. It's not fun sometimes, but you got to do it. And you do what you got to do. And you find that power when you're flat on your back, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the place that it's like, okay, I need to take some of this stuff off of me so that I can get up and show up even better than I was before. And it changes and it shifts you. And it's nothing that you expect, and it's everything that you need. It really is. It's so interesting. I would say, it's recognizing the idea that you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that you can choose your own flexible mindset, and that helps you decide what comes next instead of letting it happen to you. Because a lot of people feel so boxed in by a diagnosis or by a situation. And if you let that limit you, that's what your child is going to learn too. But if you recognize that this is simply a new definition of something that's a part of life, and you break down the walls and you still let it all be open, you get to walk into that the way you want to. Avalon, one of my favorite stories about her was we always had doesn't live in this household. She was diagnosed and it was like, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that. All these things were put on us as, doctors and therapists and everything. And it was like, no, I'm sorry, I doesn't live in our household. And that was my motto and mantra for her. And she went off to kindergarten and, it was like, I told the gym teacher, she may be in a wheelchair, but she's not going to sit on the sidelines. Doesn't live in our household. You may do it differently than everybody else, but you find a way to do something. You don't sit on the sidelines of life. And so whether it was give her a whistle and let her be a referee, or a clipboard and let her keep score, whatever it is, she's going to participate. So she came home one day in first grade and said, "Hey, Mom, I joined the cross country team." And I said, "Oh, good for you." And she waited, she waited, she waited for my response. And I didn't say anything. And she said, "Well, I know I can't run. Like, I can't actually run." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, but I figure you joined for a reason." She's like, "Yeah, but not for pom-poms." And the next day she went to practice and the coach was telling me, he was going to help her be like a cheerleader. And she was like, "No, I need a clipboard. I'm going to be the assistant coach and I'm going to help all of my friends get faster scores." That's what she did, And so there's this way that we can empower our kids to take charge, but we have to demonstrate that also. And so it's okay when it sucks. It's okay that it's hard. It's okay when you feel like you're on the ground. Know your people around you that are going to help you back up. Pick up yourself, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, pull up your big granny pants and face the challenges, because the gifts that come are still amazing. They're just not the gifts you anticipated, but they're beautiful and they're there and they're waiting for you to discover them, So for me, I got to watch my daughter grow up and be empowered. I got to watch her start a nonprofit organization that is national award winning, that is about youth leadership for other kids like her. She wanted to give the opportunity to other kids to help kids like her. So it's by kids, for kids, the Avalon Foundation. She does amazing work and empowers everybody else to give back, which is part of the receiving and giving cycle. So she got to heal herself by giving back to others. That's how we all do it. I never in a million years thought I would be a president of a nonprofit organization. That was not my intent nor education. Boy, has that been a learning curve. But an incredible gift. And we get to help hundreds of families all over the country. We get to travel, we get to do things. And she is off at school in DC, planning to do law school and become an advocate on a much larger scale. And it's because she believed she could. Now, she could have been the kid that also, didn't go to college and didn't think that she could and didn't have the energy for these things. And, but she believed in herself. And that starts with parents. So we, by no means will I take her credit. She's an incredible human being. I tell her all the time, you should be proud of yourself. I never say I'm proud of you or I feel like I'm taking credit. So I always tell her, you should be very proud of yourself. And I am excited for you. And I am just elated for your successes. But that's where she's at. And the small piece for me was always being the parent that she needed me to be. It was never the parent I thought I was going to be. And believing in her and telling her you can, it goes a long way. It's a simple thing, but it goes a long way.
I'm sitting here thinking maybe you've seen the meme on Facebook or, with the quote along the way where women need other women who think they're a big deal. And I'm sitting here in this moment really recognizing that children need to see from their parents that they think that they are a big deal. But I notice that it's hard for a lot of women to want to think that they're a big deal. Like we've been taught to stay quiet. We've been taught, right, that we're bragging or that it's arrogant. And so I think it just really goes back to that moment where I said I just really found myself empowered and enlightened around how I needed to move forward. And so if you really want to mitigate the trauma for your family, it's working towards that spot, because so many moms can't even find in themselves what is great, let alone trying to figure out what is great about their children and being able to express that. And so just even in this podcast episode today, we've talked about so much, but at times when we ask ourselves, why does this feel so hard? I think for women especially, and the reason they're needing so much support and help is, we forget that we can do hard things. We're doing it all day long. It's just giving ourselves the permission and the pat on the back that, hey, we are doing this. This is hard. But, women need other women to think they're a big deal. But man, our kids right now and always have need to see that mom and dad think they're a big deal. But if, you can't be what you can't see. So if mom or dad or as a family, things aren't feeling on the up and up, then it's going to be really hard for our kids to see that. So I think just in this podcast, mamas, mitigate the trauma for your family by really finding out what it is about yourself that you want to stand on and let go of what's not, serving you and your family anymore, and just really rebuilding from that place. And it's not going to happen overnight, right? Rome was not conquered in one day. And I think that's where moms like, this feels so shitty sometimes that's the pace. It's like, I get it when families are calling me and it's like, okay, well, we have a family trip coming up and we need this better. And it's like, well, time out, right? Like, let's back this up and let's talk about what the realities of this journey. And it's like what you said, just really breaking up with the expectations. But this journey and the time frame is different for everyone. The healing timing is different for parents and kids. And there's this whole just beautiful journey and brutal, right, journey in the middle of all of it that, we find ourselves, but it's not cookie cutter. And I think that's what our world wants in our businesses. It's what we want at home. It's what we want for our kids. And it's like, nope, everybody's got this individualized approach. And that's what's so hard and great about meeting everyone where they're at in it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're in that crappy place, just get yourself above the clouds. That's kind of another Mary Bethism. Get yourself above the clouds and be the sky. Recognize that everything is moving through. And if you can get above the clouds instead of in them, you get to have a different perspective. And it doesn't mean that the problem's not there. It just means that you're choosing to see it for what it is and recognize that it's not life-threatening. It may be life-changing, but that you do have the ability to meet your child where they're at, to meet the problem where it's at, to meet yourself where you're at, to meet your partner where you're at. Mm-hmm. You're going to lose friendships.
Yep.
It's inevitable. You're going to have people that don't get it. That's inevitable. You're going to have schools that challenge you. You're going to have society that judges you. All of it's inevitable. So just buckle up because that's going to happen. Period. End of story. The rest of it, though, what the next chapter is past that is up to you. It's what mindset you bring to it, how you want to meet those challenges, and what gifts you want to find in there. The fastest way to a high vibration, our highest vibration is joy. Fastest way to it is gratitude. Find the things that you can be grateful for, and it immediately lifts you up. We do that. I do a lot of work with teenage girls too. And it's like, okay, instead of comparing ourselves to all the judgment out there, let's look at what do I already have that's working for me and bring that joy all the way up to that high level vibration. And you can do that as a parent. You can teach your kids that, I love it. Yeah. Your kids need to be a big deal to you. I used to always tell mine, it was like, you're not the center of the world, but you're the center of my world.
I love
And
that.
I'm here to help. And I want you to figure out what your world is. You get to decide what your world looks like and see the problems in the world, see the joys in the world. What's God calling you to be in that world? And you just get them to start to open their minds to wonder and to explore. And when they get to do that, then whatever it is that their shortcoming is, their diagnosis, limitations, all of that, it gets a different light. It becomes the cloud in the sky instead of their whole world anymore. So we have to believe it first and we can pass it along. And you're exactly right. That's the way you mitigate things for your family. And moms are kind of the center of that. Not that dads aren't, and not
Yeah.
that there aren't certain dads that are. But I mean, really, the mama trauma thing is very real.
Wait. Everyone knows a guy, but I got a gal. Chica Creative knows branding is more than just a logo. It's a story, an experience, a message. It's your magic. Need help capturing yours? Visit chicacreative.com.
Very real. So as we get to the end here, let's go with that for a minute. So an individualized approach and then maybe a collective approach that helps you when you're finding yourself when you're going below the clouds, right? And so I know for me, we have moments at our house, right? So they're moments, and that's how we talk about things. Like if there was a moment of anger, or there was a moment of emotion that somebody is finding themselves as it relates to guilt, shame, blame, any of those, right? It's a moment, and we all really just take time to process that together and walk through it, and we move on. And so, when I was growing up, right, like the whole energy just went not only just throughout the day, but it went throughout my whole childhood and into certain elements of my life as I was getting into adulthood. But I really try to take time in our home that when we find ourselves in this moment, whether it was me or one of the kids or John, that it's like, look, that was a moment. What do we need to talk about to get through it? We're really harnessing grace and mercy in those moments, and we move on, and we really treat it that way, though. Like we literally let it go and we move on. And another thing that I remind myself is that each day is new. And I find that that's where so many people get caught up as well, as the guilt, shame, blame. And, it's just they carry it into the next day, and you carry it into the next day, and you carry it into the next day. And your bag, man, that purse that we talked about in episode 0, it just gets so damn heavy. And it's like, you got to let go, and you got to give yourself the grace and mercy that you're doing the best you can with where you are, with what you have. And so I've had to relearn, learn, and unlearn so many different things throughout this. And so that's my secret sauce, right? Like that's my jam, is just finding when we're in moments, we're harnessing them, we're processing them, we're being with them, and we're moving on. And there's multiple times a day I'm reminding myself that tomorrow is a new day. And, what do I want to learn from what we just experienced and try to do better? And I'm not going to lie, there's days then we get into the next day and it's like, didn't go so well today. And so again, we're going to try it again tomorrow. And I can tell you 5 years into this, right, there's things on the front end that, I look back and I don't like the way that they went, but I'm so celebrating and having gratitude around where we started to where we are. And then the other side of that coin would be, my North Star. And my North Star is wanting to break, generational curses and generational trauma that I've went through that, like you said, I know there's lessons in this, and I hate the way that they have come forward at times for me and my family. I hate that at times that we've had to go through this, or that my daughter has had to experience this as part of her childhood. But it's so, again, brutal at the same time that it has helped all of us heal, and we're so much stronger and we're so much better because of it. And so my North Star always, every day going into that new day, is that we can do this and we're getting better because of it.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. The one word that I want to honor you for that I didn't hear you say yet is forgiveness. So it seems as though like whatever you guys are picking up and dealing with, the forgiveness comes easy. You open your hand, you let it go, and the next day you get to start over again. And forgiveness is key for so many things, especially in these high pressure households when a lot's going on. If we can't be forgiving of each other, we are just piling on, all of the weight of everything that we keep carrying, and we just keep taking it in day out,
Yeah.
So
What
having that
about you? What about
Yeah,
you? Like, what's your big one? Like, if mine is, each day is
yeah,
new, like, what's carried you through over these 25 years? Like, if you had to really
sure.
boil it down and pick something that you're saying to yourself on the regular.
Thank you for asking. I think there's a process I go through with myself. And that is, I think is it a Brené Brown? I'm not sure. Now I'm having trouble remembering. Or Byron Katie. I think it's a Byron Katie. Somewhere along the line, I learned the importance of what is the story I'm telling myself? Look at it. Is it true? And work through the storyline, own it, and then drop it. So I do a lot of that in my head. That's my process when stuff gets tough for me. Why is it tough? What's there? Oftentimes that's where the generational stuff shows up. Oh, because I learned that was supposed to be tough, or I learned I was supposed to think that way or feel that way about this. Okay, is that true? Is that really what's happening? Did that woman really give me a dirty look at that party and ignore me and walk away? Or did she not even hear me say hi and was looking at something else and ate something bad? I mean, like it can be anything. So is the story I'm telling myself true? And what do I have to learn from it? Why am I looking at it? And then how do I drop it? So that's my process on things. The thing that gets me through, I think our North Star, and this was really important with my partner that I'm with now, was the importance of showing up with your very best self every day. And there's no competition but with yourself. And it's not even a competition. It's just, how can I show up in the best way possible with the gifts that I've been given? How can I be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday? And if I'm having a tough day, how can I slow down enough to respond instead of react and have patience with life? So for me, that's what it is. That's what it is for my household, really. And it gets us through. It gets us through in a way that we get to celebrate what our accomplishments are. We get to comfort each other and have a lot of compassion when things don't show up the way we think they should, when we get caught up in that assumption piece or that expectation piece, and we get to reset with each other. And I think that's really, we're a very close family because of that. So I'm grateful for that. I am looking forward to knowing that the best is still yet to come. And it's been pretty darn good so far.
Yeah. I love this North Star concept. And a lot of times when we do these podcasts, right, I've listened to some over the years and I've listened to some great ones, but I really want to get specific around tangibles so that when listeners are with us, like, okay, that all sounds great, but how do I get back to my North Star? And so I'll never forget during coaching, that certification process, there was an analogy that one of our instructors used. And it's kind of like when you go to the beach and you get in and then like the current starts taking you and you get out and you've laid your stuff down, but you get out and you've moved, like life has moved you and the current has moved you and you can't quite figure out where you put down your stuff. And so you gotta look around a little bit. And I think that's what happens, whether it's rare disease or that's just life and marriage and work and advocacy and all these things that we're talking about today, that if you need help, right, getting back to your North Star or your stuff, right, when you're needing to find it, I have an acronym I used called WALK. And so I walk over here for a minute and give myself some space. And the W stands for who am I? And that's just a way to help me remind myself, like I have a couple of words that through my own work I've come up with that make me who I am. And so if you don't know what those are, like take some time at the end of this podcast or over the next couple of weeks of like, wait, who am I? And so that's the W. And the A is, what action do I need to take to get back to who I am and what I'm needing? And then the L is, what do I need to let go of? And you just kind of mentioned it. It's like, was that woman really was she really ignoring me? And oftentimes that let go is either judgment or it's guilt, it's shame, it's maybe because I've been through something before that it snuck back in, and like that's not truth anymore. That was a moment, right? And so it's generally needing to let go of something. And then the K is, who's the keel of my heel, right? Like who do I need support from right now? Or, where do I need to be a big deal? Who needs to remind me? And so oftentimes I'll reach out to a friend and just be like, look, found myself in this moment of vulnerability. I know it's just, stuff that's showing up, but like I either tell them I need to talk to them, I want to run something by them, or, I've had a couple of times with friends that I've literally showed up on their phone line or their doorstep when we get together and just be like, again, on the floor and be like, I really just need reminded who I am today. And I have a friend that's like, well, let me help you. Let me help shine some light when you can't do it. And so I love that analogy because it's simple, right? Who am I? What action do I need to take to get back to my stuff, my North Star? What do I need to let go of? And who's the keel of my heel, and who do I need support? And so I'm one that I like steps, or I like things to be easy. And that's just really guided me
that.
well
Yeah,
over the
that's
years.
beautiful. I think you and I talked in our conversation about sometimes I use the analogy, who's got the keys to the car?
Yes, I love
So
that.
it's like I have to stop and say, who has the keys to my car right now? Because all of me is invited in. The emotional me, the psychotic me, the pain body, the cognitive, mental me, all different facets of me. I'm all of them. And they're all
Yes.
in the car together, in the bus, But who's driving is often a question I need to ask myself before I say the wrong thing, before I overreact in the wrong way, before I misstep in some way. And the answer I always want to give myself is my higher self, myself that's connected to my higher power, to the divine, my higher self, highest self that will help integrate the all of me so that I'm honoring my emotions. I can listen, I can honor exactly how I'm feeling, but that doesn't necessarily have to dictate my action, that I can honor what I know, what my wisdom is, but then it all comes together in this place where, who's ever driving the car better be the one that knows how to listen to all those different parts of myself. Because if I've given one more attention than the other, that's when I usually misstep and end up needing to recount my steps and go back and say, okay, I need to grow here, So that's another analogy I like to use with myself.
I love that. And, you bring up a really good point, Deb. Like I find a lot of times, again, women like to put things on autopilot, and for good reason, right? We've got all these moving parts. But when you're going through something like this, where your world's been rocked, I find women do this a lot. Like a decision needs to be made and they feel so rushed and so pressured. And so they're just, right, they're throwing up the answer, or they're throwing it out when they've really not take discernment or wisdom or their need into consideration. And so a lot of times, like just taking this moment in the podcast to remind women that it's like, look, if you need a minute, take it. Like I have people reach out and it's like, you know what, let me think about that. I'll get back to you tomorrow, or whatever the appropriate time frame feels like, or, next week. Or we don't have to feel like we're just this object that gets to regurgitate an action for somebody who needs something from us. Like we do have needs. We have this recalibration that's going on with our lives and our kids' lives and our marriages. And as things change, like we really deserve that space to come over here and be like, wait, how do I really feel about this?
Yeah. And that leads your family. Remember that. Like staying calibrated with yourself is so important. And I think I probably, leaning into friends, the ones that as we get older, you mentioned you're in your 40s, I'm in my 50s, and it just becomes truer and truer every generation for me, or I should say every decade for me, that, having just the couple golden friends, that you can lean into is so valuable, so much more valuable to me than having, 50 people that know me and I can go to a party and say hi to them all. Having a couple that really know how to lean in. I lost a lot of friendships through my life, especially through Avalon's diagnosis. People that just didn't get it. They didn't get, especially as I was a single mom for so long, like how I could say like, yeah, I really want to make those plans with you. And then the day of be like, I can't do it. I was fired by, my esthetician and by one of my hairstylists because I had to change appointments. And they didn't understand, the pressure of like, my daughter's sick, my daughter this, and her health dictated my social life as well. And the friends that really stuck around and got it and were very forgiving of that and didn't have expectations and understood, those are the ones that are still in my life. And they are just more valuable to me than anything else that I have aside from, my actual family relationships. So, be that friend to women. Be
Or
the
that
friend
men
to women that they need. Yeah.
Absolutely. Or even that mentor. I think what's been so refreshing as you and I have gotten connected more and more for sure over the past year, but definitely the past 6 months is, you say we friends for sure. It's gold and you don't need a ton. You need the one or the two or the three that get you, sis. And because that is what's going to carry you through. But the other side of this is mentorship. And so it was so refreshing the other day that when we were talking, I'm embarking on a new journey and, I have so much experience that informs what it is that I'm working on next, but there's a whole area that is new and I'm learning. And it just meant so much to me. Like women get so busy, but you're like, look, I'm happy to be here to help support you and mentor you along the way. And I think there's two sides to that conversation. One, women have to be willing to receive it. And so we have this old school mentality that if we're being vulnerable or being seen, then we must not know what we're talking about, or we have to pretend like we know everything. So we have to put that down. And then the other side, though, is that women have to be willing to do it. And, it's something that over the years, because women have been so competitive, I have made an intentional effort that when I can with women who have been younger than me, that I'm turning around and I'm putting the hand up. But I just want to say in this moment, it meant so much to me to see you do that for me here over the past 6 months, because quite frankly, this is the life of women. Motherhood is already hard enough. And then you throw on a generation of kids that now 1 out of 2 has an autoimmune issue. 30% of kids are school avoidant, like the mental health challenges, like parenting and motherhood was already hard. And you take my generation of kids and mamas, it's going to get even harder for women to continue to move forward to make the changes in the workplace that we need. And so it is going to take even more intentional efforts from women like yourself to say, how can I help you? And what do you need right now? And so it's a reminder for all of us, wherever we're at, that we need to be here to better support and love our friends. But who is that one person over your lifetime, or a handful if you can do it? But if it's one woman that you can help that's coming up behind you and lift her up, that's how we're going to get there. Because the challenges that do exist for motherhood, maybe you've seen that meme where the moms are on the track and the men have the straight away to be able to go after their goals in their life. And just as mothers, we don't have that. And so we need to recognize that there is a superpower in that there are things with motherhood that instead of being so frustrated by them all the time, we really need to embrace them. But we need to embrace each other and empower each other through this if we're really going to get not only where we want to go, but where we need to go as mothers and workers,
but
right?
you're forgetting the fact that we're programmed to think that we can do it on our own.
Yes.
And so one of the issues we have is saying yes to help, and so that I think is critical too. I mean, I can sit here and talk about this. I am one of the hardest people to say yes to help. My girlfriend just texted me the other day. We were having a rough day and I have somebody sick at home. And she's like, I'm dropping food off for you guys tonight on your doorstep, not even ringing the bell. I'll text you when it's there. And I said, oh, we're okay. Don't worry. I got some groceries. She said, did you think I asked a question?
I love that.
And it was like, okay, thank you. I have to remember as being empowered and going on this journey that I also need to learn how to say yes and receive graciously. Otherwise, you can put your hand out, but too many of us have been programmed to say, oh no, I got this, don't worry. Oh no, I got this, don't worry. So the giving and the receiving is important. And I love, being a Native American medicine woman, I'm very connected to ancestors and the idea of ancestors. We stand on the backs of amazing women from centuries before us. We have so much strength behind us in the spirit world. We are just so blessed with the idea that we're strong enough because they did it before us and they had it harder in different ways. What you're talking about, what we're trailblazing, is very challenging. And that's why these conversations need to happen. And I like to get really enriched with this idea. And I have amazing grandmothers and great grandmothers I never even knew that would want to send their love to me to do this well. And to connect myself through generations and to think for myself, why is this work important? Because my great-great-grandmother or my great-great-granddaughter, that I may not ever even meet, I want to leave a legacy for her of a world that is going to be better than it is today. And when we connect ourselves with what came before and what comes after, it also helps us recognize our own power and where we're at and keeps us in alignment with the world in general so that we're not too big and we're not too small. We're just right, So the girlfriend thing is really important. We need to learn how to receive and to give. I feel like I can't let go of this conversation without giving an extreme amount of love and accolades to my greatest mentor, Dr. Gadal Kaba, who has been my teacher and my mentor in my professional and personal life for 30 years now. And I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have what I have. I wouldn't wisdom-wise everything without her. Avalon's, even her, accolades are in part because I had such good support from a mentor. And as we get older, all of my friends are becoming my mentors. All of my friends are my teachers. I can learn from everywhere. I brought up Dr. Mary Beth Crawford. She's amazing. I listen to her podcast and they just remind me of something or move me in such a way. I'm getting that with your podcast, So, open yourself up to listen, learn, keep what works and throw away the rest. No big deal. You'll need it somewhere else down your path somewhere. You can pick it up later if it doesn't work for you now, but take what works and listen and open up and, help each other. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Well, you brought up leaving a legacy earlier, and you no doubt are, Deb, and it's been such a fantastic opportunity to connect with you today, hear your wisdom, hear your discernment around this rare disease journey. And I'm so grateful to hear that your daughter is doing so much better and that you're out here trailblazing and that you are laying the groundwork for more families to go through this differently. And so can you just lay the landscape for mamas or families that if they are looking for additional support, how can they connect with the Avalon Foundation, what it is exactly that you all are offering and how they can get connected?
Oh, thank you. The Avalon Foundation, we have a website, kidscaringforkids.org. We help right now families that have hypophosphatasia, which is the rare bone disease that Avalon has. We're working with pharma and other funders to help us open up to more rare diseases so we can continue to help more different communities that are in the rare disease area. And we also have a youth leadership program that does that. That's local right now in Toledo, but we have plans to launch that nationally as well. So we're excited for everything we're doing. You can learn more at kidscaringforkids.org. And if you want to learn more about me, I have a website, livesacred.org, kind of gives you more about my background and my coaching, etc. If that's of interest to anybody. That's about it. But I'm just so excited to have had this conversation with you. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for opening this platform for moms and for everybody that can listen to this and glean any sort of wisdom to help other people in the world. This is what we need to do. And you are certainly a trailblazer, and I just love you for it. Thank you.
Well, I love you too, Deb. And thank you for, hopefully we can just model for people how to safely get some of these scary conversations out of the box, or as women, when we're really just trying to recalibrate and redefine who we are and what we want and need to be moving forward, that we can do this together. This is how you can do it, how we can support one another and just get this stuff out of the box, because it's not right. It's not gonna get us anywhere keeping it in there. So like, let's get messy. Let's do this and let's keep trailblazing. But I wanted to recap and end with, I'm so grateful for your words today around be the parent your kiddo needs you to be. And I just want to honor again that forgiveness piece, that you even squeezed that out for me, and just to give more parents and listeners on the podcast that, like, listen, tomorrow's a new day. And so take this podcast, take this conversation with Deb and I, find your place in it, and figure out how you want to move forward. But what last advice or tidbit of information would you like to leave our listeners with today, Deb?
Keep listening to your podcast.
Mm.
Keep listening. Listening is a big one. Find what works for you and keep listening. First to yourself. Listen to your own heart. Listen to your child. Listen to those around you that offer you support and love, and get messy and listen to these podcasts that are out there, these websites that are out there. There is so much information. It can be overwhelming. Just take what works for you and reach out when you need more.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Mama Trauma Barbie podcast. I have so enjoyed our conversation, and just thank you for the difference that you're making in the world. And we appreciate all of your efforts and all that you are doing, sis. But I love you. I adore you. You are ridiculously amazing, and just for being the gift that you are. Join me next week as I welcome the ridiculously amazing Claire Coder. She is CEO and founder of Ant Flow and a Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient. And we're going to talk about the bloody truth about women in business. Claire is on a mission to make the world better for people with periods. Learn more about how she raised $17 million in venture capital funding and what it took to get there. Thank you, Precision Chiropractic, Jennifer Panzician with Edward Jones, Dutch Maids, the Avalon Foundation, and Chica Creative for believing in better care, better support, and better outcomes for mamas and their families in the real world. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical, health, or nutritional advice.